Welcome to the Build Your Private Practice podcast, a space for Canadian therapists who want to support others, make an impact, and build a sustainable practice that works for them too. I'm your host, Liane Wood, a registered psychotherapist, group practice owner, and business mentor, and I'm here to help you build a private practice that allows you to keep doing the work you love without burning out. Because the people who need your help the most are counting on you, and you deserve a practice that supports you while you support them. Let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Jane, a practice management software and EMR built to support you in the day-to-day work of running your private practice. If you're a mental health practitioner, you already know the care you provide starts well before your client arrives and extends far beyond the therapy room. Jane is here to support every part of that experience. With online booking, your clients can book at a time that works for them. And with features like waitlist notifications, they'll even be able to grab last-minute openings when they pop up. It's an easy way to keep your schedule full while providing your clients with the care they need. During your appointment, Jane's AI-powered documentation feature can help you thoughtfully take notes so you can stay present with the person in front of you. And after appointments, you can end your time together on a healing note, not a transactional one, by charging the card on file and rebooking before they head out the door. To learn more about how Jane can support you and your clients, head to jane.app/demo. Oh, one last thing. If you're ready to get started with Jane, you can use my code BYPP2MO for a 2-month grace period on your new account. Well, welcome back to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. I'm so glad you're here because today's episode is a special one. If you have ever wondered what it really looks like to go from agency work to private practice and to do it in a way that centers community, mentorship, and impact, you're going to love this conversation. My guest today is Roxanne Francis, a registered social worker, psychotherapist, and the founder of Francis Psychotherapy and Consulting Services. Roxanne's story is one of courage, clarity, and community building. And in this episode, we're digging into her journey from frontline social work to private practice ownership, the roadblocks she's faced along the way, and how she's now paying it forward by supporting the next generation of therapists. We'll also talk about how systems like the ones she uses to run her practice help her lead with more confidence and less overwhelm. So, whether you're in the early stages of launching or thinking about what legacy you want to leave as you grow, there's so much wisdom here for you. Roxanne, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much, Liane. I'm really excited to be here and to chat with you about work.
Amazing. Well, let's start here. Tell us a little bit about how you ended up opening your own practice and what did that leap look like for you?
Oh, wow. There's so much to think about here and to dive into. So, I am a mom, and let me see, how much do I explain? So, I have two boys, and they are both rainbow babies, and that means I had a miscarriage before each one. And so, when I was working full time in agency, specifically at this agency, there were 2 days a week where you started at 1 o'clock and ended at 9 because they wanted to support individuals who came in after their 9 to 5. And so at that time, my kids were little. And so there were 2 days a week where I would get home from work and they were already in bed.
Mm,
And
mm,
so I'm the kind of person who really dove into motherhood. I wanted to, navigate it with gusto. And it would really just hurt my heart that I missed my babies before they went to bed. And
mhm,
at the time, my one child, I think he was maybe in grade 1 or senior kindergarten, and I got home from work one day, and there was a little note. There's a table right by our front door, and there was a little note in his childhood scrawl that said something like, "Hi, mommy. I wanted to tell you about my day. I hope you had a great day, but I have to go to bed now, so we'll talk tomorrow." And that completely wrecked me. And I thought,
oh,
okay, there's got
mhm,
to be a better way. And, at work, I thought maybe that might look like management. I knew that something needed to change.
mhm,
Also, while I was navigating that, I was dealing with a bit of burnout, and I didn't even, you think as a therapist I would recognize that, but I didn't. Now I can recognize it, but back then I didn't.
Yeah.
I was working with a lot of trauma clients. I was struggling with coming home late a couple nights a week. And there was something going on internally, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And one
Mm-hmm.
day, one of my colleagues was walking down the hall, and she was going out for lunch, and she just tucked her head in my door and she said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And she said, as therapists do, she tipped her head to the side and she said, "Are you okay?" And I just burst into tears. And she came
Ooh.
into my office, she closed the door, she sat down and she said, "Okay, girl, what's going on?" And
Mm-hmm.
I started to tell her a little bit about what's on my heart. And she said, "Have you ever considered going to your doctor and asking for a leave of absence?" And while
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I would advise my clients to do, I'd never really thought about it for myself. So I went
Mm-hmm.
to my doctor. She gave me a leave of absence. I came home, I got some rest, I played with my babies, everything was great. And then in about 5 months, I found myself in the same place again. And I went back
Oh.
to my doctor and I asked her again. And she said to me, "I'm going to be very gentle with you while I ask you this." She said, "I can write you another leave of absence and I will. But when you go back to work, what is going to change?"
Mm-hmm.
And I began to realize that something needed to change. And I think I began to realize that I needed to leave the agency, but I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do at the time. And I thought of private practice, but I was a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine, her sister was starting her own private practice and was looking for independent contractors. And at the time, I worked with a lot of children and she needed a child therapist. And I thought, you know what? Let me just work a couple weekends on the side and see how this goes. And in no time, my caseload filled up and I had a long wait list. And I decided to give my notice at the job. And it was a little bit scary, this kind of
Sure.
what if I go and it doesn't work? But
Mm-hmm.
it's been working. So here we are. Eventually I left the group practice and launched on my own. And it's been going well ever since.
Amazing. Amazing. I think your story is one that, so many therapists can resonate and relate to, Roxanne,
Hmm.
just in terms of like burnout, but then also, the challenge of, trying to find the balance or the integration of work and then life and, you know,
Right.
family and all those pieces. I totally, my heart is breaking with you, as you're talking about missing your kids' bedtime.
Yes.
And yeah, yeah, I'm right there with you. So, you talk about like leaving agency and then going to work as an independent contractor.
Mhm.
What drew you then from being an independent contractor? What drew you into your own private practice? And when did you know or how did you know it was time?
Mhm. So I was doing okay with, being an independent contractor with this person who became my friend. Um, but I also knew there was something in my spirit that said I needed more, right?
Mm. Mhm.
I
Mhm.
want more. And I think there was maybe that sort of leadership thing that was growing inside of me.
Mhm.
Um, but I was starting to find my voice. I was using social media. There were a lot of things happening in society that I felt really passionate about.
Mhm.
And I also felt like I think people were starting to talk a little bit more about mental health, but they weren't quite understanding it. And so I used the little voice that I had on social media to talk about what I was seeing coming through in my practice.
Yeah.
The anxious children that I was seeing, their anxious parents who didn't know that their anxiety was impacting their children's anxiety, things that
Mhm.
were happening in society, things that I felt were unjust. I just turned my phone on and I started speaking into it. And
Mhm.
people started paying attention. People started listening. People started responding. People started asking questions. Are you taking new clients?
Mhm.
Can I see you in person? Can I send my husband? I'm struggling. Does this look like
Mhm.
burnout? And I thought, whoa, this is turning into something here.
Right.
And my the place that I was doing independent contract work, I was seeing clients in person, but it was an hour away from where I was living. And a lot
Mhm.
of people in my area were starting to ask about seeing me in person, and they were thinking, oh,
Yeah.
that's a little bit too far. And
Right.
also began to realize that the clients that were coming to me, the demographic started to shift.
Hmm.
It was less children and more moms, um, young adult women, men who were struggling at work. And so I started to change in terms of the clients that I was seeing, but also I began to realize that clients were coming to me not from the the practice that I was working at, but through social media, and they were asking to see me. And so
Right.
I spoke to the woman that I was working with, and I said, listen, the demographic is starting to shift. More people are wanting to see me in my area. I think it would just make sense for me to find an office closer to where I live. And, we talked it through. We, we changed things, and we parted
Hmm.
in an amicable way.
Good. Hmm.
And then I launched, Francis Psychotherapy and Consulting. And I think what happened is that I started to find my voice, and
Okay.
people started to um, pay attention to the things that I talked about and how I sounded and how I showed up and how I talked about my own journey in parenting. And,
Hmm.
I think when I started to look for my own therapist,
Hmm.
I really did not connect with the kind of person who left their personality at the door.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
think
Hmm.
therapy school, so to speak, teaches, or used to teach at least, that you don't self disclose, you don't talk about yourself. It's just the
Yeah.
client and their issues. And that's just not how I exist, right? In my
Yeah.
personal life,
Yeah.
in my work life, you're going to get all of the sauce. And
Hmm.
so I
I love
think
that.
people started to respond to that.
Yeah.
And I think they want a therapist who is an actual human being. And
Hmm.
so I just started to show up and find my voice, and people started to respond to that. And that's how the business started to grow.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I agree with you. I think when you do find your voice, when you find that balance of,
Hmm.
there, I think yes, I'm all in for, some self-disclosure with balance.
But there is a balance for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
100%. Yes.
yeah. And I know that you weren't talking about an unbalanced way.
Yeah.
But just, thinking that delicate balance of letting people know, hey, I'm a real person too, and I struggle with juggling parenting and life and work and,
Yes.
all the
Yes.
things, right, that come in, but bringing our personality in, and,
Hmm.
understanding that, I'm a fit for some people to work with in therapy, and the people that aren't a fit to work with me for whatever reason, they might be a fit to work with you or another
Someone
therapist.
else.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why we need so many therapists, because
Yes.
each of us can really only connect well to a certain amount of people. Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. So, Roxanne, what would you say were some of your biggest challenges or fears that you had to navigate as you stepped into private practice?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. I started to when I launched Francis Psychotherapy and Consulting,
Mhm.
um, it so happened to coincide with this amazing event called the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh dear.
And I remember saying to my husband, so they shut the world down for what was supposed to be only 3 weeks in
Yeah.
Ontario, where we live. And I remember sending a note out to my clients saying, my in-person clients, saying we can do this virtually. And a few of them said, okay, that's fine, we'll navigate to virtual. And about 80% of my client my clients said, we'll just wait till this blows over.
Yes.
And I remember saying to my husband, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Everyone's going to put this on hold until the pandemic is over. And at that time, we thought it was only going to be a month or two, right?
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
was panicking. And
Mhm.
my husband says to me, and he's a bit of a strategist, he says to me, you know, I think that this thing is going to last a lot longer than people expect. I think it's going to impact people in ways that they did not expect. And I think your clients are all going to come back. And he was right. Within a few weeks, not only did they come back, but more people came in droves, because this, as we know now, this pandemic impacted people psychologically in a
Yeah,
significant way. And so my biggest fear was, what if they don't come? What if they
yeah,
don't come back? What
yeah.
if, I quit my job for this thing and it does not pan out? And
Mhm.
and this is why, again, community is important. Thankfully, he was live-in community, but my husband said to me, you know, I know you're scared about launching your practice, but there's a reason that you did this. And let's just give it a good try.
Right.
And you are a registered social worker. You
Mm-hmm.
practice psychotherapy. You were doing this work before you started your practice. And if your practice does not work, your degree is not going to go bad. You
Mm-hmm.
can dust it off and get a job in a hospital. You can dust it
Mm-hmm.
off and get a job in an agency. You're good at what you do. But
Mm-hmm.
let's just give this a good try. And,
Mm-hmm.
here we are.
Oh my goodness. I think back to the early days of the pandemic, and
Hmm.
yes, I think, for many therapists, whether you were new to private practice or you'd been in private practice for a while, I think, we all went through the same thing. Like you're talking like 80% of your client load. And
Yeah.
I distinctly remember that as well, of like being okay. Like I had like the vast, vast, vast majority of my caseload and clients that I was working with were like, oh, we'll just wait until we can
Yes.
come back in person. And I was like, okay, sure. But yeah, that
Yeah.
fear. So I mean, I can only imagine what that was like being new to private practice and having the world shut down.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Oh my goodness. Now, you spoke just a moment ago about community and the
Yes.
importance of community. So, can you just expand a little bit on that, on how community has really shaped your journey?
Yeah. Yeah. So, as I was building this practice, trying to get clients, you put your name on that directory and you're looking into different things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was also thinking about marketing, and um, I hired a coach, someone
Mm-hmm.
who was supporting me with branding and marketing. But the other thing that she did was that she started a group, um, I guess a group program that I
Mm-hmm.
registered with. And what we
Mm-hmm.
did was we met virtually once a week for, oh my goodness, I can't remember how long, maybe a little bit over a year.
Yeah.
And there were approximately 12 of us in that group.
Yeah.
And not all of us were therapists, but we supported each other.
Mm-hmm.
We challenged each other. We held each other accountable. We
Mm-hmm.
cried on each other's shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
We checked in group and outside of group. We celebrated each other's wins. We
Mm-hmm.
asked each other questions about resources. Hey, that looked amazing. How did you do that? Who did you call? Do you have a good accountant? And that really drove home to me the
Mm-hmm.
importance of community, and
Mm-hmm.
how, there's that saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. It
Mm.
really does make a significant difference, and it made a huge difference in my journey. And
Mhm,
when that group eventually disbanded, a few of us still stayed in contact, right? There are times
mhm,
when when I go out in the community to a networking event or so on, and I see one of those women, it's like instant sisterhood, right?
mhm,
And we need that, because when you don't have someone in your corner reminding you of who you are,
mhm,
challenging you to make bigger goals,
mhm,
telling you this is just a season, it won't last forever,
mhm,
giving you support, sharing resources, it really does fuel you for the journey, right?
mhm. Yeah.
When you have someone who is a few steps ahead of you and someone else who's a few steps behind you, it makes a huge difference, right? Sometimes, especially on this journey, which is one of the reasons why I love what you do, is that sometimes, particularly in entrepreneurship, when you
Mhm.
find something significant happening or you feel discouraged, you think you're the only one,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that can make you feel like, well, I may as well just pack it in. But when someone
Mhm,
else comes alongside of you and says, actually, this is exactly what happens in year 3, month 6, at this time of year, you begin to realize that it's not just you, that
Right.
this is par for the course. Oh, you
Mhm.
mean this is what happens in the summer, or this is what could happen in the summer, and this is how you get out of it as a therapist?
Right.
It
Yeah.
helps you to realize that you are not the one who
Mhm.
is failing, that this is just what the journey looks like.
Right.
And you look at business differently, because you and
Mhm,
I both know that
mhm.
when you are in quote unquote therapy school, you graduate and they say, go forth and heal the world. They give you no business support whatsoever.
Right. Mhm.
And so when the math isn't mathing, you feel like you're a failure. But
Mm.
with
Mhm.
the supportive community, you begin to realize that you're not a failure, and these are the
Mhm.
tools that you can use, and this is a support that you need, and it gives you fuel for the journey. Otherwise, you don't last but a minute in this
Mm.
industry.
Well, yeah, particularly when those kind of challenging or difficult moments come along. Yeah, I think what you're saying, Roxanne, is really resonating because speak with so many therapists when they get hit that bump or that roadblock and
Hmm.
they personalize it. This means
Yes.
I'm not good at this. This means I'm not
Yes.
meant to be in private practice. And it's like, no,
Hmm.
this is normal.
Hmm.
This is normal.
Hmm.
Everybody goes
Yep.
through. Yeah, 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 yeah. So, and it's really only when we are, if we're in a silo and isolated and just working on our
Yes.
own, we don't have that opportunity to find that out. And it's only when we're connected to others and can have those conversations that we're like, oh, you too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now you are now mentoring and supporting newer
Yes.
therapists, right? So
Yes.
take a minute and tell me and tell our community, what does that look like? What are you up to?
Yeah. So, in 2021, the world was starting to wake up a little bit in our area, and
Yeah.
but it still wasn't. Everyone was still sitting behind their computers, and I just got sick of. I heard a lot of people say that they were tired of being alone, that they needed community, and they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, what if I got some people together?
Mm.
We were
Mhm.
still in kind of vaccine territory. Some people were for it, some people were against it. People were wearing
Yeah.
masks, and I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, I still want to get some people together.
Mhm.
And so I took a bit of a gamble, and I just put the word out there, and I said,
Mhm.
let's have a high tea. I'm going to contact a hotel and see if they'll do a high tea for us, and let's see if we can get it together. And
Mhm.
I called it the Therapist Lounge.
Yeah.
And we had about maybe 20 to 25 people in the room.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
we had our little high tea. We
Mhm.
talked about, the ins and outs of the work. We talked about burnout. We,
Mhm.
traded some dark humor jokes about this work. And, you know, it was such a big exhale.
Mhm.
After when it was over, people shared their pictures on social and were telling their friends about it. And everyone said to me, how come I didn't hear about this? When is the next one?
Mm.
And,
Mm.
I answered so many questions just based on what I knew and my journey during that event, that people started flooding my emails, my phone started to
Mm.
ring, my
Mhm.
DM started to go off
Yeah.
about, so and so told me that you gave them this advice. Well, what should I do about this? And what should I do about that? And I thought, huh, there's
Yeah.
actually something here. And so I started to just create this little community, just
Mhm.
supporting therapists who are new to private practice. I
Mhm.
built a system. I now call it, it's a VIP day, where
Mhm.
people can come to me and we spend the day together, and I just talk to them about the nuts and bolts on, how to start your practice. And I
Right.
mean people who want to leave their agency but they have no idea even how to register a practice. So we
Mhm.
go
Mhm.
from like the very first thought, I want to start a private practice, now what?
Right.
And so we go from how to register your practice to how to get clients to what do I do in slow seasons to
Mhm.
all of the things. Where do I keep my case notes? All of the things that they know nothing about. So we spend the day and we do that. The
Mhm.
Therapist Lounge we're now planning for the fifth year.
Mhm.
And the conference has grown. We have speakers who come in to talk about finance, to talk about taxes, to talk about becoming a speaker, to talk about wellness. So the conference is about entrepreneurship and also wellness for the
Mhm.
therapists. We
Mhm.
have a chiropractor who comes in to talk about tension headaches and how to set up your
Mhm.
desk.
Mhm.
We bring a masseuse in, so people can we all know about the lack of benefits for people who are in entrepreneurship, right?
Mhm.
So we
Yep.
offer that as well. Um, and people learn about how to manage their
Mhm.
business, how to manage their money, how to navigate burnout, how to keep their clients coming back. Um,
Mhm.
And every year that we do this conference, people ask us, "Are you doing it again?" So, I'll do this as long as there is a desire for it. And
Mhm.
I believe that there's a desire. One of the things that I love, as we talk about community, is watching people come in and, say hi to people who they've only seen their names online, or
Yes.
they see
Yeah.
the names of their practice in Facebook groups and they get to actually meet them in person. I get
Hmm.
to see people exchange phone numbers and take pictures together, and what's your social media handle? I'm going to follow you. All of
Yeah.
these wonderful things, because people really exhale and relax when they realize that they're not alone, that they have community, that they have someone they can call when they have a question. A friend of mine went on a trip and visited the Dead Sea,
Hmm.
and she said what she found out about the Dead Sea is that the reason that it's dead is because it has an inflow of water, but very little outflow. And so, we talked about that. And what I left with is that I can learn all the things and I can collect information and find out about resources and grow my practice. But what is really important is lifting as I climb. What is really important is filling people up as they come along.
Yeah.
Because, when I was coming up, I didn't have a lot of information as I was starting, but I have
Mhm.
learned as I have grown. And it just makes sense for me to share information with people who are coming along, people who are struggling, people who
Mhm.
are just learning about practice, people who are wondering, what the heck am I going to do in the summertime when everyone goes on vacation? Because our bills are disrespectful and they will come regardless of whether or not we invite them. And so
Yes.
we need to make money in the summertime when it's slow.
Yeah.
And so I'm really passionate about supporting people who are coming up behind me, because there is more than enough room for all of us to thrive.
Absolutely. And there's so much need, right? There's so
Hmm.
much need. I mean, we're still hearing about not the pandemic, but the mental health crisis in Canada.
Yes,
So,
yes,
I do think it's really important that we help those newer therapists. And I'm
yes.
so glad you're doing what you're doing, Roxanne.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Let's shift gears just for a second.
Yeah,
I want to go back to, your private practice,
yeah.
because I know that it's no longer just you in your practice, right? And so you have a group practice, right?
Yes, yes, that's right.
Right, right. So, as a private practice owner with a team, tell me a little bit about the systems or tools that you use to stay organized and to have things run really smoothly.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so hands down, um, easily that comes to mind and readily that comes to mind is Jane app.
Mm,
Um, I could not function without Jane, to be honest. I
mhm,
started using Jane as a solo practitioner. It actually helped me save on admin costs. And now that
mm,
I run a group practice, it just streamlines everything. I get to pay attention to whose caseloads are full, who needs new clients, the hours that people work. I get to look at the reports is my favorite feature. I get to look
mhm.
at what marketing tools are working, because when clients come in the door, I ask them, how did you hear about us? And
Right.
so we're able
Mhm,
to keep track of that in the system as well.
mhm,
Um, how much money we make month over month, year over year. Is the
mhm.
practice growing financially? Is it not? What do we need to pay attention to in terms of, when is it slow? When is it busy? So Jane is really, really important. It's a really important part of my practice. One of the things that I shared about was that when I talk to other people, is that about 3 years ago, my younger son, who has asthma, had a significant medical episode and ended
Oh,
up in
mhm,
hospital for 5 days.
mhm,
And if it were not for Jane, whew, I
mhm.
was able to say to my admin, you got this. I can't do this right now. You're on
Mhm.
your own, because
Yes.
I need
Yeah.
to go take care of what is supremely important in my life. And
Mhm.
thankful to doctors and nurses who worked their magic, we were able to leave the hospital with a clean bill of health after 5 days. But
Wow.
I
Mhm.
cannot imagine having to navigate that without a system that worked in the way that it worked. I was able
Mhm,
to, it
mhm,
just takes care of everything behind the scenes. It's like a
mhm,
well-oiled machine,
mhm,
right? And so, yes, we have some admin support, but they have Jane, and
mhm,
it just works, right?
mhm. Yeah.
Um, Outside of Jane, I like to we use Google Suite.
Mhm,
I use Canva for my creative needs. Um, what else? We use QuickBooks for some
mhm.
accounting stuff. But yeah, those are the tools that I live by.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I will second you with Jane. The especially some of the automations, like
Hmm.
for me, the appointment reminders, that just
Yes,
go out automatic. Like I don't even have to think about it. You set it up once, it's done. Everybody gets
yes,
an appointment reminder. And the wait list feature, if people
yes,
get in and if the cancellation comes up in your schedule, Jane automatically lets them know,
yeah,
hey, Liane
right,
has an opening. There's so many little pieces. I say little, but,
yes,
when you put them all together, that what you're talking about, saving time on admin,
yes.
those things, they're just massive. And, I
Hmm.
don't have live admin in all my admin is virtual for my private practice.
Virtual, love that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Jane has in her system a QR code that you can print out, put up in your waiting room.
Yes,
Clients self-check themselves in, right?
yes,
So
yes,
my team, we're all in our offices, and our clients use the QR code to check themselves in, and it comes up on our screen in our journey, so
yes,
we know the next
yes.
person is here, right? So
Next
those,
person's here.
all these, like, I call them little things, but when you
Hmm.
really add them up, and you can see how much Jane helps, right, with the admin, it's just massive.
Yes,
Just
yes,
massive. Yeah.
100%,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And I'm with you. Yeah. I use Canva too for graphics and different things. And you mentioned Google Suite. I use that.
Yeah,
QuickBooks. Yeah. Well, I
yes.
think we pretty
Okay.
much have very
Yeah.
similar
I love
things
it.
that
I love
things
it.
that we're using in our practicing.
Yes.
Yeah. But hands down, Jane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Roxanne, let me ask you one more question.
Yeah.
If there's someone who's been listening to this episode and they're thinking about starting a practice, but they feel,
Hmm.
a little unsure, what's one thing that you would really want them to know?
Um, I would want them to bet on themselves,
Mm,
to trust themselves because you are your own best advocate.
hmm
The agency that you work for, yeah, sure, they might like you, but they are invested in their own bottom line,
hmm
right? And if you are invested in your own bottom line, then you will do everything in your power to ensure the success of your own business. There will be no one rooting for you like you.
hmm
And when you bet on yourself, it's the safest bet you'll ever make.
hmm
You got hired at your agency because you're great at what you do.
hmm
And if they recognize it, then you should too. Those are
Amazing.
the things. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing words.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rox.
Yeah. Of course.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us so
Hmm.
openly. Your journey is such a beautiful example of really, I think, what's possible when you blend skill with heart, right? And when you
Yes.
commit to lifting others as you climb, as you said.
Yes.
So thank you for
Yes.
being here. Mhm.
Of course. It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a great podcast.
You. And to all our listeners, I hope that this episode has reminded you that you're not meant to build your private practice in isolation.
Mhm.
Community matters, mentorship matters, and the people you surround yourself with can shape what's possible. So, if you'd like to connect with Roxanne or learn more about her work, check out the show notes for links to her Instagram and LinkedIn. And if you're looking for your next step in building a sustainable, fulfilling private practice, we've got a whole bunch of free resources and support waiting for you at our website, buildyourprivatepractice.ca. And if you're also looking for a client-centered system that supports your practice behind the scenes, Roxanne and I both use and recommend Jane. And you'll find a link in the show notes to explore what Jane can offer you, as well as access to a 1-month grace period with our code BYPP1MO. So until next time, keep building a practice that supports your life too. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow Canadian therapist who needs this. And remember, the work you do matters. Keep showing up, keep holding space, and keep building a practice that works for you. If you're looking for practical tools or support to grow your practice with more clarity and confidence, head to buildyourprivatepractice.ca. There's lots waiting for you there. I'll see you next time.